Hey guys, how you going? Vaulsc here. Now, it's been less than a day since the new jurisdictional command of TUNGUSKA came out, the new sectorial for vanilla Nomad, well, the new sectorial for Nomads and infiNity. This video, I just have to straight up warn people, this will be an impressions video. This will just be me reacting to the release of the new sectorial and talking about it. It won't be like my normal review videos where I sort of give a pretty in-depth analysis and conclusive analysis of a vanilla sectorial, vanilla faction or sectorial. This will be more about my impressions because it's been less than a day since it came out. Obviously, I haven't played any games that involve the sectorial. I haven't had enough time to build a lot of different lists and read up on everybody else's opinions, so we're just going to be reacting only, so take it easy. The sectorial itself, I know that whenever something new comes out from Corvus Belli or any other company that designs strategy games of any kind, as soon as something new comes out, there's a camp of people who are absolutely foaming in the mouths that, oh my god, it's so awesome because it's new. And these people will look only at the good stuff, that the powerful stuff that the new release can do. And then you've got pessimists like myself who continue to look at all the really powerful things that other factions can do that this new release can't do. And sort of keep that in check. We're going to be trying to go for a bit of a middle ground between that. I think that's sensible. I mean, we're going to be looking at, okay, what are the new and powerful and unique things that we can achieve here, and what are the things that are missing? What's the cost of all of that, and try and rein things in. Spoiler alert, I'm just going to skip right to the end and already say that my reaction and my impression so far is that this sectorial is a bit average. I don't think it's anywhere near the power of, Toha and Vanilla Hakislam and Imperial Service in certain missions, because those guys, for me, are the top dogs for a lot of the scenarios in ITS. Having said that, they are a fair bit better than the sectorials, which I consider the weaker ones, namely most of the mercenary ones, particularly Druze, are way down there. They're probably still a bit better than some of the other really weak ones, like maybe Morats and some of the Pano stuff. That's subjective, though. What I do find shocking, what I do find really surprising, is that apparently, and again, there are some bugs on Army 6 right now and things aren't altogether correct, but apparently Vanilla Nomads is also picking up, the profiles here. A lot of these aren't unique to the sectorial. So if we go through and we have a look, guys like Mary Problems, the Tactical Uber Hacker, obviously the Hollow Men, don't know about the Zonautica, probably. These are units which are now available to vanilla Nomads, and quite significantly the Hecklers, right? So vanilla Nomads were already very, very strong, very powerful, because you've got efficient units like the Moran with the Crazy Koalas and the Repeater and the, obviously, a Specialist. The Intruder multi-sniper is insane. The Morlocks, really efficient, warbands, smoke throwing and so forth. Not to mention the Jaguar can also throw smoke and defend deployment zone. You've also got the very powerful hackers in there, plus a whole bunch of really efficient remotes. So Nomads were already very competitive and very good. And now you're suddenly just getting a Heckler profile where you can have a jammer in there as well under a camo state. So what? It's like, if you'd asked anybody several months ago, well, what's the balance like between vanilla Yuching and vanilla Nomads? Are they on fairly equal footing? And most people would have said, sure. I can't see really any particular imbalance there. Yuching's got access to some really awesome stuff. They are missing some really powerful stuff too. Nomads, same thing. They've got access to some really awesome stuff, but they're missing some of the stuff that Yuching has. But then you've got a situation where Yuching lose a whole bunch of stuff due to Uprising. Shinobu's gone, the Raiden's gone, the Aragoto's gone. A lot of the stuff that they really like to use are gone, whereas Nomads have stayed exactly the same, and now they are gaining some powerful profiles. So there seems to be a little bit of an imbalance going on there, which I find, as I said, shocking. but it hasn't broken infiNity. We can still play infiNity and enjoy it, and the game will still be reasonably balanced. Let's not get too far out of hand. Time now to go through the TUNGUSKA profiles and just talk about them. Obviously not analyze them in depth, but just give them a go. By the way, guys, when I first looked through and I saw things like cyber minds and counterintelligentsia, stuff like that, I was like, what are these rules? How do you see what they are? And then eventually, after people seemed to be talking about them as if they knew what the rules were, I realized that actually in this document that came out way back when the TechB came out, there are a whole bunch of new rules which didn't have models to apply to yet. So if you're stuck with that, just go look that up. It's on the infiNity, the website, downloads, and you can actually see what some of this stuff does, and we may be referring back to this during the video. Alright, let's just have a look through and talk about our impressions. So Miranda Ashcroft can be in a group with a authorized bounty hunter, and they are both regular. This is still super boring in my view. These guys cost you points, and I don't believe they're anywhere near as efficient as some of the powerful Tunguska troopers that we're going to be seeing. So I'm just going to skip straight over these guys because they kind of bore me to death. I like Booty, but I mean, just compared to the other stuff, it's just not really that interesting. Bakunin Clockmakers, well, you need an engineer somewhere in the faction, and I haven't really fully checked, but I believe this is the only way to have an engineer, so they may as well have one in there, right? Daktari, again, a doctor. You can find some paramedics elsewhere, but this isn't really known as a doctoring sort of faction, but you do have a competent doctor in there, just straight up willpower 13 doctor. Can't really ask for much more than that, at least she's there. The Hecklers, now we can start talking for real. So this is a new thing, and you get a Heckler in the starter set, and I believe there's a new model coming out that has the Heckler jammer. The jammer is probably the most notorious thing in the game alongside symbiomates, and now we're extending that to a new faction, so it does feel a bit like power creep. We do have a Heckler with a jammer. Now, Tunguska can have up to 3 of them. I haven't gone to check to see how many vanilla Nomads can have. I hope it's only 1. But Tunguska can have 3 of them. So with 4 deployment level 1 and limited camouflage, you can have a line of 3 of them spread out beyond your deployment zone, and they all potentially have jammers. Now, that can be more effective than the Gazi Motiwa jamming network, especially as these guys don't have extremely impetuous to mess with their positioning. But you are paying a lot more points for that. So 23 multiplied by 3, that's a pretty serious investment for just jamming. Is it worth it? Well, yeah, probably. Jammers are really the king weapon for missions where your opponent has to come towards your side of the table to complete something. For example, capture and protect, we have to go and pick up their little beacon thingy. Or looting and sabotaging, where you have to come over and destroy the objective on the other side. So that can be pretty extreme. I think even Power Pack has something where you're better off trying to come over to the other enemy side of the enemy table to place a model and base to base with it. So having Hecklers do that is pretty strong, and being able to take 3 of them is a pretty big deal. You do get the fast panda with them, so if you're going to be actually investing in 3 of them, I think most people will probably only take 1 or 2, but some will take 3. You may as well have a really strong hacker, and luckily this is a faction with tons of strong hackers to make use of the fast panda. It just means that your hacking threat range is going to be really, really large. Taking the guy with a boarding shotgun and Emirat can be a nice, nasty surprise, and it can be a bit of a leveling thing with your opponent if they're expecting the guy with the jammer, so they come in and they get Emirat instead. But the thing is, anything that's vulnerable to an Emirat's vulnerable to a jammer anyway, so they're going to just stay clear of them if anything they have is vulnerable to that sort of stuff. So I don't really, at first glance, think the boarding shotgun / Emirat is as good as the profile with a jammer. I'm sure I mean, if that was the only kind of Heckler you could take, you'd probably take them sometimes, but just not as good as the jammer in my book. The Red Fury, the Red Fury is probably my favorite weapon in the entire game. I think it's a really, really good gun. Great range band, and shock is really important. You lose a little bit of damage, but it's worth it. The only thing about this guy is that he's not really kitted out for shooting. He's a bit more of a trickster sort of unit. So if you're relying on him to, take the orders on board to do the shooting, I think you're doing something wrong there. It'd be better off to go with some of the other troopers we'll see soon. This is a faction that's got access to The Zon Nordica, Krisa Borzak, the Grenzers obviously the Link team, the Hollow Men, we'll talk about them soon, Salamander Squadron, but you've still got the classic Cyclone Sputnik, Spitfire with Assisted Fire. So all of these guys that we've just mentioned are probably better at doing the shooting game and fulfilling that role than the Heckler Red Fury. It's nice, but you'd be better off going with the other guys. And then, of course, we've got the killer hacking device with Cybermines. So Cybermines is a bit of a newer thing. If you guys are not sure about Cybermines, it's just detailed in this document over here, where apparently it just goes off in the same way that a mine does if something hackable comes in range. Now, it's not like a hacker for a control area. I believe it still uses a little template. I'm pretty sure. Cybermines follow the same rules as anti-personal mines with the following exceptions. They trigger in a different sort of way. Based on the kind of model it triggers it, that is. They do BTS checks instead. They force immobilized state instead. So yeah, it's gonna be a template. So you can at least see where the mine is positionally, and you can sort of check line of sight to it. And you don't have to come into line of sight if you don't want to. The powerful thing about Cybermines, though, is that you might be able to move the Heckler up to the corner, put the mine just around the corner so that it does become a line of sight of the enemy tag or whatever, then move around to go and hack it or attack it. And as soon as that tag responds, it's going to get hit by the Cybermine because it'll be triggered by an arrow and might become immobilized. But it is just immobilization level 1, so I don't think Cybermines are game-breaking. They could be handy, but they don't really wow me. They don't really seem that insane. Of course, you can be a killer hacker, but as we'll see, this is a faction which is spoiled for choice with different killer hacking options. So the killer hacker Cybermines guy, if you've got 24 points to spend, I would recommend just taking the jammer guy, because he's of more impact to your game overall and of more impact to the mission than this guy here. So jammer profile really does it for me at first impression. Mary Problems is brand new. She seems like a character designed for Tunguska, but the thing is she seems to be available for Vanilla Nomads too. I might be wrong about that. I want to be wrong about that. I don't like the idea that Vanilla Nomads just can suddenly have a hacker here of the strength and caliber of Mary Problems. She's very interesting because she has both an assault hacking device and a killer hacking device with Whip 14 and BTS 6. So once she dominates the hacking game in terms of eliminating other hackers, she can then provide that massive threat against everything else that's hackable. I wonder what things are like when she goes up against something like Kernau, the new Kernau for Onyx. So Kernau is also a pretty decent whip, and he's got Maestro instead of Lightning, which is what Mary's got. So if Mary gets a repeater over towards him and hacks him, she's Whip 14, -3 for Maestro, down to 11. -3 because he'll have an inevitable deflector in his Link team. So that'll be 8. So Lightning is 2 dice, so 2 dice on 8s to take out Kernau. Whereas he's Maestroing back, he goes up to, can't remember whether he starts as Whip 13 or 14, so let's presume it's 13. It probably is 14, but let's presume it's 13. Goes up to 16, back down to 10 as a result of Lightning, and no other mods because he's got a killer hacking device. So Mary's attacking him with 2 rolls on 8, and he's responding with 1 roll on either a 10 or 11, depending on what his stat actually is. That's risky. So I don't know if she really falls into the category of an absolute best hacker in the game, but she's very, very strong. The one annoying thing I can see is that if you're investing that whopping 30 points into this being your primary hacker, yeah, you get assault hacking and killer hacking for that, but you probably still need a regular hacking device to power up some of the other things we'll see later if you want to take remotes. So it's kind of annoying that she doesn't have that combo of like killer hacking device plus regular hacking device, which is a profile I prefer to see. She seems to be kitted out for actually normal fighting, which I find a bit weird. CC, so Blitzskill 11 with a submachine gun makes me think a little bit like Bit and Kiss. A Zapper is very much like an Ema but with the small template plate range. Pitcher is obviously really useful for any hacker of this kind. And for deployment level 1, makes life easier as well. I think she's very, very good. She has BTS 6. The thing about this profile is that you're gonna be seeing people take it in vanilla Nomads as well. So she's a buff to Nomads, I feel. She's very good. If you're constantly running into Ariadne and Tohar and armies that aren't really going to be, worried about her assault hacking device or killer hacking device, she might be a bit more of an overspend because in terms of her fighting, there are other units which sort of tend to fight better. Although with an ODD submachine gun, ballistical 11, she's definitely not that bad. I mean, if you're going out in the late game, pressing buttons with her, setting up suppression fire at some point, you're definitely glad that you had an optical disruptor. So I hope that's not bloating the points cost of her too much, but it doesn't feel like she is. I mean, if you look at Kernau, he's similar for 27 points, but he doesn't come with an assault hacking device. It's just that he goes in a link team a lot more effectively than she does. So I personally feel that Kernau is more valued to Onyx than this character is valued to Tunguska and Nomads, but that's at first glance. This is just an impression. She's still pretty good, and if I played a lot of Nomads, I'd probably be taking her. Rand Ashcroft, boring, we're going to skip her. Puppet Tactica Company. Now, this may be the source of a little bit of confusion here. I was having a read of the rules for it, and I was having a look at, where does it say, Marionette. So Marionette seems to say that this, have a look. Marionette troopers don't contribute orders to the order pool, cannot receive orders from their order pool. These troopers are always activated by the same order as their controller. So they're a bit like G-Sync, but they're also like a link team as well. They apply the rules for fire team core of 2 or 3 members, depending on their number. There was something about, oh yeah, so all the members of a troop and their controller must be in the same combat group where they count as only one trooper. So let me just demonstrate something. If you take a basic 12-point Puppet Master, and let's say we take the Red Fury Puppet Bot, and we go for the Fort Observer Puppet Bot as well, these guys will constitute a 3-man link team, like a Haris team. But you only spend an order on the Puppet Master, and then you choose, I think, a link leader, and one of them does its thing. But apparently, it says here, where they count as only one trooper. So in terms of the slot, as you can see, I've selected 3 entries here, and I'm still only generating 1 regular order. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that I then build a list where I just chuck in a whole lot of extra guys. Let's say we take a Clockmaker and a Daktari and 3 Hecklers and a couple of these Minesweeper bots. If we click on ITS here, it says you cannot... okay, let's close that one. We go to some transconductor zones as well. Notice that I've now built a list that seems to only have taken up 8 slots in Group 1, and I'm now overflowing to Group 2. So this is implying that the puppet bots are counting as troopers in terms of slots according to the coding of Army 6, but they're only providing 0 orders, whereas this says they only count as 1 trooper. So does that mean that if you put a Puppet Master and 2 Puppet Bots in your group, that you cannot ever take more than 8 orders in that group? If that's true, that seems like a real weakness of the Puppet Master's troop. Because if you're going first, your opponent subtracts you with a command token, and you've got 2 guys left. Although having said that, that's maybe the reason why counterintelligence is there. So counterintelligence means that if you are crippled by that 2 order deficit, it becomes 1 order. So that may be the reason for that, but unless Army 6 is wrong, don't forget, guys, that if you take 3 of these puppets, that counts as 3 slots, but doesn't generate 3 orders. So if you compare it to the posthumans only generate 1 order, but they don't take up more than 1 slot as well, because it's only 1 trooper at the end of the day, which I find quite interesting. As to the strength of the Puppet Masters, look, if you can get away with them, they're super cheap, and I can't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to put assisted fire on the puppet bot who has a Red Fury and just walk around with them, because he can effectively sustain 2 wounds. He's physical 12, so long as you're okay with the loss of regular order there, they are very, very strong, and I'd really recommend taking them, because that's pretty insane. You can take a Fort Observer, so you have a specialist in there. I guess you could take the basic Puppet Master so he can provide hacking to his own troopers, since they're going to be in range anyway, so that might be a way to go. Yeah, this is quite strong, just because of the fact that Assist to Fire on something like Red Fury is always going to be very powerful. It's a bit of a redundancy there, like Red Fury already has shock, and by adding Assist to Fire, you're not giving it any more shock, but the ability to ignore cover is also still very powerful. Yeah, if you can take Puppet Masters, I would probably recommend it. They seem very good. Who are we going to have a look at next? Rule Specter is apparently working for Nomads as well now. I've talked about Rule Specter in my other video about Uprising. He is an irregular trooper, but if you're using the airdrop version of him, and that's the version I'd recommend, he's basically, not going to be able to spend that original order on anybody else anyway, so you may as well have him irregular. Look, I still think he's pretty good. He's got really good close combat assassination potential with his EM weapon. Natural Born Warrior is really helpful. He can either be CC25 or just take away their MA3 or whatever they're going to be using. Boarding shotguns are better on models which start closer to the enemy, and he certainly does that with Combat Jump. And having a nanopulser is really, really good defensively as well. NWI isn't very good reactively, but when you're attacking models, you can just go after models that don't have shock ability, and he's very powerful in that regard. It also allows him to land right next to people who might be able to shoot him and then put him into NWI state, and then he can start moving out. You could make a Haris with the FTO versions of Perseus, we'll talk about soon, the Spectre and the Stempler Zoned. I can't really see how that'd be too effective. I think it'd just be quite expensive, but I haven't really looked into it very much. So the new Securitates are what the Sectorial's all about. The Securitate used to be a pretty, maligned trooper. You didn't see very much, wasn't very strong, but they have buffed them. The most interesting thing I find about the Securitate is that you can basically make a fairly cheap link team, just taking a lieutenant and a basic dude, plus maybe an HMG. In fact, let's turn the basic guy, rather than a lieutenant deploy, we're going to make him a paramedic, just so we've got a, or even a hacker, just since our list is going to need a basic hacker somewhere, unless we use the Puppet Master hacker, or, I don't know, could be Mary. In fact, let's just go back a step. We're going to put in the HMG and the lieutenant decoy, so there's going to be a basic Securitate, a Securitate lieutenant, and the HMG, and that's going to be our little trio there. And the important thing is that both Perseus and the Grenzers count as Securitates. So if we skip straight away to Grenzers and talk about the Grenzer used to be a model that sort of looked really cool. It came in the Ice Storm starter set, but he was really average because MSV 1 isn't really anywhere near the category of MSV 2 because you can't ignore smoke with it. And he was just this reactive guy that tended to get shot by an HMG. The thing is now he's got a whole lot more profile options, and you can put him in a 5-man link where he does become pretty insane. So if we take the missile launcher, the sniper rifle is also the other option. I mean, there's 3 points difference, which is significant. Missile launcher is way more damaging and has anti-material, but the multi-sniper has better range bands. But in most cases, I think the missile launcher is probably the defensive way to go. So now you're having a cheap link team, but you're powering the Grenzer, so you've got Ballistic Skill 16 shooting the missile back, Armor 3, MSV 1 to help out against some sort of cutter or a Swiss guard trying to remove you with his HMG. And this now becomes quite a strong link team, and I think this is the one thing that Tunguska really has going for it. You can create a very effective link team like this, and if you're investing heavily in other attack pieces, just take another Securitate. You could even take a second Grenzer if you want to, but I'd recommend the Securitate. Or if you want this link team to do a lot of work later in the game, you grab Perseus. So this guy is very similar to a Myrmidon officer. He gives the team some really powerful close combat ability, But the thing is, if you're going to be moving out across the battlefield, you take Perseus as your point man, and you've got basically a ballistic skill 16 guy in a link team with ODD and NWI, and he's got the breaker combo rifle with the link bonuses. It can throw smoke grenades like crazy with the link team backup. So for any sort of forward movement and aggression with your Securitate link team, this guy is golden. If you're absolutely sure you're only ever going to be defending with the link team because you've chosen something else to attack with, for example, some other kind of Haris team or a Rule Specter or your Puppet Masters, then maybe drop Perseus just because 34 points is too much to pay for just a cheerleader and have another Securitate and said you got more points. But in a lot of lists, I think Perseus is the choice here because after you've expended your attacking pieces earlier in the game, the link team is going to move out, and that's when Perseus will really shine and mop things up late game. So Securitate's actually really good now, and crazily enough, they allow Nomads to take a Whip 14 Lieutenant who just sits there and presumably pays no SWCs, although I haven't checked to see whether vanilla Nomads will actually pay SWCs for this guy. I think they should. Interventors aren't new. We've already known about them for a while and seen them in many of our games. They're availability 4 in this faction, as they probably should be. They can join a Grenzer's fire team, but the thing is, the Grenzers are too expensive to be forming a full link team with. You're way better off putting them in with the Securitates to keep the cost of them down. And note that it says an Interventor can join a Grenzer's fire team, not a Securitates link team, so she's still going to be a bit of a loner. However, I mean, everything you knew about Interventors before will still stay true. So if you liked them before, you'll still like them now. And if you didn't like them before, I don't know why you wouldn't have liked them before, but if you didn't like them before, you won't like them now. Walkor, as standard. The Zond Nautica. So this is a motorbike, and a lot of people are drawing comparisons between this unit and the Aragoto. Some important differences, though. 8.4 speed, not as fast. It's an AI motorcycle, not a regular motorcycle. So this means that when you dismount, the motorcycle sort of comes along with you as a G-Synced, Palbot type unit, which is kind of cool. But most people that use motorbikes tend not to dismount that much, although having said that, most people that dismount haven't had access to the Zondnaut. He's a bit more expensive than your classic Aragoto. So if you take the Spitfire guy, and I would recommend the Spitfire guy most of the time, you've got BS-12 with Mimetism, which is strong. Okay, so you can attack pretty well there, but you don't have cover, so same as the Aragoto. There is a smoke grenade launcher, though, for this chap, and that's pretty handy. Because you're going impetuous, throwing smoke, it's a bit like a hybrid between the old Hakaslam bikers and the Aragoto bike in this case. Just because you can do a bit of both. You can do actual decent long-range shooting, but you can also put the smoke grenade out there. So I see nothing wrong with this kind of profile. If you want a really good attacking piece, this is it. Having the long-range smoke light grenade launcher is something you're not really seeing elsewhere in this faction, and being able to do it with Impetuous in a very dense table can be very good too. The smoke grenade launcher could be really useful for setting up Rule Specter. So you drive down the side of the table, smoke grenade comes out, Rule comes on the side of the table, and you're away laughing. So, yeah, pretty good unit. Boarding shotgun, combi rifle, assault hacker, not a huge fan of those, especially not the assault hacker because killer hacking is really going to ruin your day, I think. So we just talked about the Grenzers. Again, this is a 4.2 speed model. It's I don't have a problem with medium infantry in general, but medium infantry that defend are better than medium infantry that attack because of the speed deficit. So put them in a link team, take the sniper rifle or the missile launcher and call it a day. That is my advice. Note that we can actually have an interventor with them as we just talked about, but if you're really going to be going for a 5-man core link, I don't know, guys. I mean, that seems very expensive to me. When, you could be doing the similar thing with Hollow Men. Let's stick with just the defense. Cruiser Borax, these guys have been in the game for a bit now. We've seen a lot of them since the Beyond Ice Storm box came out. So I see these guys in the table. I've never been, hugely impressed with them. They do seem to be a bit of a improvement over the old Mobile Brigada, because they're very good in the active turn shooting. They are pretty tough. But at the end of the day, they don't have any multispectral visors or camo or anything like that, so they can be a bit predictable. If your opponent's playing very well and just sort of keeping key units out of line of sight and total cover, these guys aren't going to achieve very much. And they aren't really the kind of model that defends particularly well either, because despite their abilities, if they're up against, you know, some other powerful mimetism or TO camo unit within a machine gun in their active turn, that is the opponent's active turn, these guys will still be beaten. You might have seen my latest bat rep where a Kreezer Borak was trying to defend against a Cien Warrior and a Smoke Cloud, and that kind of thing just shreds these guys. The Hollow Men, so this is a bit more interesting. This is a new trooper that's available, and these guys are going to take a bit more analysis because I think they're a little bit more nuanced. So 6.2 speed, that makes me think of the Umbra Samaritan type speed, especially because with Super Jump, this is very similar. You know, Umbra Samaritan also has 6.2 speed with Super Jump, and I've played that model a number of times, and it has its limitations, it has its strengths. The power of the Umbra Samaritan is that you could also super jump off a roof into close combat. These guys do not want to be in close combat with just CC-10 and no close combat abilities whatsoever. So they're more about the shooting. They can also jump up in the air and blitz you with a range of different kind of guns. Blister Skill 13 helps for that. So compared to a guy like an Umbra Samaritan, these guys shoot a little bit better with BS-13. They're also a Structure 2 rather than NWI and Wounds 1. But the Umbra is able to move over there and actually wipe people out in close combat and gain wounds, which is quite powerful. These guys are only physical 10, whereas the Umbra is like physical 12 plus, you know, kinematica and hyperdynamics, so a lot more defensive. But on the other hand, these guys have armor 4 and BTS 6, so they're a lot tougher when they actually do get hit. Going through some of the items here, combi rifle chain colt, boring, multi-rifle plus pitcher, now that's a profile. Multi-rifle is very strong because you've got the reactive double action round, you've got either AP or shock, very strong. And the pitcher means that if you're running somebody like Merry Problems, this guy can get up the field fairly quickly and then drop in the pitcher if you get the right angle. Blister Skill 13, probably going to be hitting on a 16 with the pitcher at the right range, and then they're going to get hacked. So great profile here. The missile launcher, not a big fan of that because with the missile launcher, you're going to be wanting to just like stand way back the back of the field. And why take that missile launcher when you could be taking a Grenzer missile launcher in a 5-man link team? Or if it's vanilla Nomads, well, I mean, the Intruder multi-sniper is the guy for you. This guy isn't the best use of a missile launcher. The Spitfire Chain Colt is, you know, the profile to take if you're not going all in on hacking. Like if you're not... If you've got another way of getting the hacking to work or anything like that, and you don't need the pitcher on his profile, the Spitfire for sure is it, because that's the medium range weapon you're going to be using midfield, and this guy is a bit of a midfielder, so that's pretty cool. He can take a whole bunch of things which help him against hacking, and he can be a hacker himself. I just wouldn't recommend these ones just because if you're worried about being hacked, the deflector's not really going to save you. And taking him in as an assault hacker, again, not very good idea because you can just assault hack with Merry Problems and she's way better at it and she's way safer for it. Being a specialist is also nice without being, hacked by Killer Hacker. It can be nice, but that's another thing. I mean, comparing this guy to the Umbra Samaritan is not hackable, whereas this guy is. Where this does become more interesting, though, is the idea that you can make a link team of them. You could take a core of them, which I find quite a fascinating link team, because you can put it with the Stempler, and there's a new version of the Sensorbot here. There's got a super jump Stempler, which I find quite funny. So let's make a little link. Let's say you want the basic specialist in there. You may not need it because you've already got a bot there, but let's just put one in anyway because he's very cheap. He's the same. And then let's take a multi-rifle guy because we want somebody with shock ammunition. We want the Spitfire guy because there's going to be some shooting at that range band where we need the Spitfire. And we just said not to take the missile launcher as a one-off defensive guy, but he might actually be okay in the 5-man link just because the massive bonuses, you kind of want that if you get to the other side of the table and you need to set him up somewhere. He can also super jump on top of buildings. So maybe the missile launcher, but the other option, of course, is to take the guy with the deflector, just because if all 5 models are moving out and you run into some surprise hacking, that deflector will be worth its weight in gold. So deflector plus BTS 6 means you might actually survive here. So this Sectorial of Tunguska can build an army list around this setup. Note that we've spent half of our points allocation already, so it's going to be expensive to make this kind of special fire team. As soon as you lose a guy, then that's it. The fire team is just broken because it's a special fire team, right? So It's specifically 4 Hollow Men and 1 Stempler Zon, so it can be a bit flimsy and a bit fragile. If you've got a pretty supreme plan, though, and you've got the setup right, moving all 5 of these guys across the table could be quite effective, and super jumping them up into buildings could be a lot of fun. I don't predict this being like an absolutely game-breaking link. It looks kind of powerful on paper, but I mean, what are you comparing it to, guys? I mean, 6-2 speed is still, a total of 8. If we just put this up against some of the other link teams out there, the Wu Ming or the Military Orders link teams, or Cornac that you've seen me run quite a lot, what do you call them? The Riot Girls, you're still going to be pumping out a similar amount of firepower at the end of the day. The fact that they've got 2 structure points is kind of cool, but as soon as a guy goes down, you're in trouble. They are vulnerable to hacking. They defend well against hacking, but they still have that vulnerability. You don't want to be moving past a hacker and just ignoring a hacker, because as soon as something goes wrong, that could be the game over, effectively. Salamander Squadron, haven't talked much about this guy in the past. He's way better at attacking than he is at defending. If you're just going to sit there with your HRMC, it's just plinking off 1 shot that does 1 wound, so it's not very punishing. Whereas if you're running something that has a multi-HMG, then that's the very powerful explosive round that you're returning fire with. If you're running a limited insertion list and you're just adamant that you want to throw 1 model at them at the start of the game, BTS 9 helps if he does get hacked, and you just move around the battlefield trying to pick things off with the HRMC and ending in a spot where he can maybe survive. 90 points, so yeah, you sort of really have to build a list around him. I don't think he's the best tag in the game. He's just a competent tag, and BS14 with the HRMC is nice if you're up against the kind of opponent that does like to set up defensive aero pieces that can actually watch the table. If you see a lot of that, this guy is really quite powerful. He can also be pretty good against those sort of Toha players who like to just stand on top of a building with a symbiote. Throwing 5 dice, you're more likely to get a crit, things like that. And if he does get shot back at, then he can tough it out with his armor 8. So the Sputniks, these aren't new. These are effectively just bots that Nomads have always been able to take. You're going to want to mix them into your Sectorial, especially the Transconductors on, because this is a faction which has no super cheap troops to generate lots of cheap orders. So the Transconductors ons are going to be pretty important unless you're going to be limit insertion. Spectres, you can take 3 of these guys. Spectres have always been good. They'll continue to be good. Taking a single Spectre, a Forward Observer, or Killer Hacker is still going to be really powerful. If you're not running Mary, taking a Spectre Killer Hacker is probably a good idea, because he's going to be right out there and he's going to be able to perform multiple roles very effectively. If you are taking Mary, you've got Killer Hacking sort of sorted out, really. So maybe take the guy with the Deployable Repeater if you don't need a Specialist, or just go straight for the Forward Observer. And lastly, Perseus. Well, we talked about it, didn't we? He's really good with the Securitates if you're going to be attacking at the end of the game with your link team and moving out. Otherwise, don't take him. Would you take the FTO version? So we can take an FTO, and we can take 1 Stempler Zond. Let's have a look. This guy here. And roll the multi-rifle. So that's 86 points. We're not using any special weaponry in here. There's no, HMGs or Spitfires. The multi-rifle, I guess, is good if you're coming in range of something which has, NWI or Dogged. Otherwise, you're going to be using Perseus as the point man because of his breaker combi rifle, and ODD, more importantly. And the Zond, well, that's your button presser. But to move around the table with these 3 just seems a bit points inefficient. There are other things you can do. You may as well just have a Spectre out there for the button pressing. You may as well have one of your other powerful shooting models there for the killing, right? So I've been through the Sectorial now. Just remember, guys, we can look at the powerful stuff this faction can do. The Securitates and the Grenzers, the puppets, the Hollow Men all seem very strong. Mary seems quite strong. Perseus is useful. When we look at what powerful things other factions can do, oh look, they've got symbiomates and symbiote armor. Oh look, they've got smoke grenades, launchers, and link teams, and they can take a 20 order list. Oh, they've got 4 jammers, and those jammers, have smoke grenades and impetuous and emirates and all of that fun stuff. Oh, cool, Onyx, you've got a plasma sniper with assisted fire and a guy that can put down white noise and fire a picture from one side of the table to the other with Maestro and a deflector. And there's the invisible missile launcher backing him up. I mean, Other factions have cool stuff as well. So when you look at these guys and see how much they cost and the lists that you can build, how strong is that list compared to some of the others? I think that this is a fairly average sectorial as far as I could tell, but this is just an impressions video. I could easily be wrong about that. I might have just missed a few really powerful things, which may mean that these guys are super broken and powerful, or I may have just sort of overestimated them too. They might actually not even be as good as I originally thought. So there is that. As I said at the start of this video, apparently Nomads just get to pick up some of these profiles straight up. Now my Mozilla Firefox doesn't seem to be loading the actual images of them, so we're just going to have a quick look through. So if you play vanilla Nomads, you can still apparently take an Ashcroft hunting partner. I'm not sure if that's right. Heckler's availability 2, so you can still have 2 jammers. Merry Problems can be in there apparently. Puppet Tactica, I don't know whether you get to use these guys as a link team in vanilla, but if you can, that seems quite strong. I mean, what's the point of even playing Tunguska if you can take all of that? Raul works for Nomads vanilla apparently. You can take the Zon Nordica as usual. So the only reason why you'd want to go for Tunguska at all is if you really want to build a link team involving the Hollow Men or the Securitates or the Grenzers, right? That seems to be it. So the final question is, all right, what's better? The link teams with the Hollow Men, the Grenzers, the Securitates, Perseus, or the availability of Morlocks, Jaguars, Intruders, Morans? The list kind of goes on. Those are some 4 pretty big names there. So do you want the link teams or do you want those super efficient, effective units? And for me, I would probably prefer vanilla Nomads. I think the vanilla Nomads have just become a fair bit stronger. Tunguska look fun though. The models look mint. I think they look really, really cool, especially the Hollow Men. They look just really, really cool. So give them some games, guys. If you spend more time analyzing them and practicing with them, I'm sure you'll achieve more than I've been able to think up. This has been an impressions video only. Maybe as time goes by, I'll eventually come back to this and do a really full-on, proper analysis video with the hindsight of some real proper experience. Anyway, thanks for checking out my little opinion reaction.